the experience of one camper.
With joy, I'm telling you what a piece of heaven youth camp is. When you have a son like Jerry, a whole week without running after him and looking for him, keeping him from mischief is unbelievably wonderful. And I can highly recommend it to all single mothers in SRF.
Boys Youth Program, it's always a different experience. We've seen, crazy stuff, and probably Jerry is one of the best examples there is. When we had him at the lake shrine, Mr. Molsky and I actually had to throw him in the ocean one time to settle him down, but look at him now. He's directing this Gala venture and providing funds for SRF Boys Youth Program, and he's a stand-up guy, usher, and that's probably one of the best examples I can think of.
Jerry had gone a couple of years to youth camp, and I never ever got any kind of report about him. And I was actually pleasantly surprised about that. And I thought, well, they must keep him busy enough and whatever, that's not an issue. And he came home happy, and he was so well adjusted for a month or so, well behaved. I mean, just amazing the effect youth camp actually had on him. Really made effort to meditate also. And then, but the following year, I got a call right before youth camp. And it was not David Todd, but somebody called me and said, Mrs. Hazelton, would it be okay if this year Jerry is not going to come to youth camp? And Jerry was standing next to me, and he heard me say, what? You don't want Jerry to come to youth camp? And Jerry was jumping up and down with his hands and crying, Mom, I got to go. Mom, no, Mom, tell him I have to come, I have to go. He was crying, just tears streaming down his face. And I was saying, whoever it was, I was saying, well, I guess there's not much I can do about that. And we sort of hung up, and Jerry was crying and kept crying. And I said, well, sweetheart, I said, what did you do? I mean, what happened? Did anything happen why they don't want you to come? And he said, no, Mom, I don't know of anything. And I said, well, something must have happened. And so the phone rang again. It was only a matter of minutes. And I answered, and it was that same person, and said, Mrs. Hazelton, Brother Dhammananda wants to know if you would like for Jerry to come. And I said, oh, of course I want Jerry to come. And at that moment, especially because I could see how incredibly important it was for him also to go. And he said, okay, Brother said, if you want Jerry to come, then Jerry will come. And the last year Jerry attended, I actually flew down. It was at Lake Shrine, and I picked Jerry up. I wanted to be there for the ceremony. And Brother Dhammananda, who I had not seen him for a couple of years, came towards me, and he kind of patted my shoulder a little bit. And I was really worried about Jerry going into high school. And Brother must have picked it up because I didn't say anything. And he said to me, don't worry about Jerry. He said, he's all right. He has changed so much, he said, and he's going to be a devotee for life. So don't worry about Jerry. Those words were so comforting to me. Whenever there was any kind of little problem or what have you, Brother's words would come into my mind right away, and I would be at peace with that. And I asked Brother Dhammananda, I said, Brother, so how was Jerry? It kind of puzzled me a little bit, that call last year, because prior to that I never really knew anything about his behavior or what have you. And Brother said, well, let me tell you, he said, from up here down to the lake, we have 100 stairs, and Jerry wore 'em out. He said, Jerry walked those. He had to go up and down those stairs so many times. He said he literally wore 'em out. But beyond that, he said, he was fine. He said, he's a good boy.
I had Jerry Hazelton, I think he was probably 10, 11 years old, my second year at Boys Youth Program. And in all our pre-meetings and counseling with Brother Dharmananda, he told us, you know, well, if you get into a situation with a boy that you can't handle, let's talk about it, because, you know, that particular boy may need to wait, may not be his time yet for the program. So I had Jerry, and Jerry had this just unbridled energy. It was just over the top. And as a group leader, you know, you're responsible for these boys, and Jerry would just take off. And oftentimes he would take off from our group and run down to the lake and be running around the lake, and I would be running after him. I mean, this happened on a number of occasions. And oftentimes when I catch up to him, he would say, well, Mr. Todd, I think you need to apologize to me. And I go, well, Jerry, you know, if that's what it's going to take to get you back up to the camp, which meant going all the way back up the stairs, then Jerry, I apologize. And we go back, and Jerry had this energy that when we were meditating, if I didn't literally have a hand on his knee or an arm around his shoulder, he would bolt. And so all of our group meditations, and whenever we would meditate, there was always this contact with him to help settle him down. And when we would stand in line, we were lining up for something, Jerry couldn't stand in line. Oftentimes I'd pick him up by the shoulders, and with my feet I would take his feet out and plant him right on the ground in front of me and put a hand on his shoulders so he wouldn't run away. After about 3 or 4 days of this, it became apparent that I couldn't manage both Jerry and our group, and I was young and learning myself. And I went to talk with Brother Dharmananda about this and, you know, get some guidance, help, or perhaps it was time for this young man to go home because couldn't contain his energy. I remember fully expecting Brother Dharmananda, once I told him what the situation was, to say, well, maybe, you know, this young man needs to go home. And he got very firm, Brother Dharmananda, and he looked at me and he says, you don't understand what his mother went through to get Jerry at this camp. You go back and you just deal with it. I go, uh-oh. And that's pretty much the way it was that particular year. And when I went home that year, I remember sitting in a station wagon when we were all packed up. I was crying my eyes out. I was so upset with Master. And I vowed to myself, I will never, ever do this camp again if this is what it's going to be like. I just can't believe that this is what I needed to deal with. Now, several months later, I realized that I had an attitude problem, and there was much more that I needed to learn with regard to right attitude and being loving as Brother Dharmananda was. And I will say this, that year after year after year, in attending convocation at the Biltmore, then Bonaventure, Jerry was just a small kid. When he would see me standing in line, he would come running full tilt up to me, Mr. Todd, with open arms, and he would jump into my arms. It was just an amazing overture of love and a tribute to Master's love for us.